Hello, my name is Roy Manriquez, and this is my geography presentation on Alaska. My first slide is going to be about seasons. From left, we start with spring, and it goes from March to May. Around March, there's still a lot of snow, but around April, the snow starts to melt. So for the first half of the season is pretty cold, wet, and windy. But around May, the weather starts to look up, and it becomes perfectly suitable for outdoor activities. Then comes summer. It goes from June to August. The weather's pretty warm all around, but the waters are still pretty cold, so lakes and oceans are cold to swim in. Daylight hours reach 18 hours, so the sun is out for 18 hours every day during the summertime. Next comes fall. It goes from September to November, and October is technically already a winter month because it starts snowing and the temperature starts to drop. Then comes winter. It goes from December to February. You can see the northern lights from December to February. It's really cold and the winds are pretty dry. And daytime hours are only 6 hours in winter, so there's more nighttime during winter here. My next slide is a Köppen-Geiger classification of Alaska. For the most part, we see a DFZ climate type, which is a subarctic climate type, but there's also tundra and some oceanic, some Mediterranean, warm summer Mediterranean, subarctic, but for the most part, it is subarctic. The next slide is going to be covering the mountains. Alaska has 4 mountain ranges. The first one is Alaska Range, and it forms the border between Alaska South Central and Interior regions. It also holds the tallest mountain in North America, known as Mount McKinley. It is 20,320 feet above sea level. The next range is a Coast Range, and the Wrangell St. Elias Mountains mark the border between Southeast Alaska and Canada. Here, a lot of clouds are formed, so it makes it so trees are perfectly suitable for growing on the other side of the mountain due to the moist and warm winds from the Pacific Ocean. The next mountain range is the Brooks Range, and it spans 720 miles from east to west. It forms a natural border between the interior region of Alaska and the Arctic region. This range is also part of the Rocky Mountains. The geologists trace its beginnings to the time before the dinosaurs, actually. The last mountain range is the Aleutian Range. It stretches 600 miles along the Alaska Peninsula, and this area has a lot of volcanoes, and it is part of the Ring of Fire. The next slide I'm going to be talking about is the geologic features, focusing on the volcanoes. The Alaska Volcano Observatory tells us that there are 130 volcanoes in Alaska. Alaska has 80% of all of the active volcanoes in the U.S., and 10% of those are found in the world. 10% of those that are found in the world. My next slide is going to be about rivers in Alaska, but I'm going to be focusing on the Yukon River. The Yukon River is the third largest river in the United States. Its overall length is 3,185 kilometers, and it also goes between the Canadian border. It goes into Canada. The watershed is 800,000 square kilometers, and it discharges 195 cubic kilometers of water per year. My next slide is going to be about the coastal area. From east to west, it is 2,700 miles wide. Alaska has the longest general coastline of any state. The Alaskan coastline extends for 6,640 miles. It is a greater distance than all of the other states' coastlines combined. Um, uh, Alaska's coastlines also hold some glaciers, and there are more active glaciers in Alaska than the rest of the inhabited world. My next slide is going to be focused on the fauna, but I'm going to be focused on polar bears. In the winter, polar bears in Alaska are found as far as south as St. Lawrence Island, and occasionally more down to St. Matthew Island and the Kuskokwim Delta in the summer. So this is around where humans live also. Bears are most abundant around the edge of the pack ice of the Chukchi Sea and the Arctic Ocean. My last slide is going to be about the flora, but I'm going to be focusing on the fireweed. Fireweed gets its name from the fact that it pops up, or it's one of the first plants to pop up after a big fire. It is the most common perennial plants of south central Alaska, so they're pretty common in Alaska. It traditionally grows up cleared out, burned out areas, but it easily propagates everywhere, so they could be kind of hard to get rid of. You could also tell how much of summer is left depending on how many blooms on the stalk of the fireweed are left. And yeah, here are my citations, and